Hello, welcome to that Bible guy. The person's complaining bitterly. They're going through hardships. They're struggling in life, and we don't know how to help them. How do we help those who are weak in faith? What can we do in order to help people that are struggling? That we may know, brothers and sisters in the church, people who used to be Christians are not anymore, people who would like to be, but they just don't have the faith. How do we help people who are weak in faith? I actually spent the morning with someone who was struggling with their faith, and they had many things that they were doing because of their lack of faith and the difficulties that it was bringing about in their life. So I had this very experience this morning on the back of this video where I want to try and just explore some things that the Bible describes in order to help people who are weak in faith. We will no doubt know someone now, someone in the future. So what can we do? What does the Bible say? First thing to say is, and this is the truth for anything, if we want to comfort someone, we need to be comforted ourselves. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians, if we want to give someone hope, we got to have hope ourselves. If we want to encourage someone's faith, build them up in faith, guess what? We need to be faithful ourselves. We cannot give what we don't have. So to start with, if you're feeling you're struggling with your own faith, it may be hard to pass that on. But if we do feel faithful, how can we help other people who are weak in faith? I just want to offer a few things today. Well, specifically 8 things today that I've got down here that I feel can help us to help other people who are weak in faith or just navigate what can be a very difficult situation where we feel a bit out of our depth. And I absolutely know what that feeling is. So the first thing I would say is, if we know someone's struggling in their faith and that's manifested in many different ways, I think what we have to do is draw attention to the elephant in the room at the right time. So ask about the issue, ask about their faith. And that might sound obvious, but I think sometimes we know that someone's struggling, making poor decisions, or that they're just not as motivated as they used to be, or they're not living the way they used to, and you just don't quite know what's going on. So what I'd say is ask about people's faith. It's a good idea to ask, how's your faith? Not just how are you doing, how's your faith? And I draw attention to the elephant in the room. The Bible does call us to look out for each other and for those who are weak in their faith. Romans 15 talks about those being weak in faith. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 14 says, and we urge you, brothers, warn those who are idle, encourage the timid, and help the weak. Be patient with everyone. Now, there's a challenging one at the end. We'll do something on that in the future. But it says help the weak. And again, Romans talks about the weak, specifically weak in faith. There is a call for us, biblically as Christians, to look out for and help those who are weak in faith. We'll look at some more things that we can do now. But just to say, let's not skip over it. Draw attention to it at the right time, not insensitively, and ask about what's really going on. How is your faith? So the second thing with how do we help someone whose faith is weak, and again, I mentioned this already, it's in Romans chapter 14 and 15. It mentions people who are weak in faith. And I mentioned in chapter 14, verse 1, it said, accept him whose faith is weak without passing judgment on disputable matters. Don't make mountains out of molehills. Don't make a big deal out of something that's kind of disputable, even though you think it's important. You know it's disputable, so don't make a big issue about it. Not for them whose faith is weak anyway. Romans 15, and this is important to remember, we who are strong, verse 1, ought to bear with the feelings of the weak and not to please ourselves. That's pretty convicting. So don't pass judgment. Don't make it more difficult for them than it needs to be. And also, don't bear with the feelings of the weak. Now, in dealing with someone today and in other people in the past, their lack of faith may come across as feelings, as the Bible says. So they may keep making bad decisions. They may keep leading themselves into sin. They may end up dealing with problems that they brought about themselves because of their lack of faith. And what does it say? We need to bear with each other. We need to bear with the feelings of the weak. It's not even saying bear with their lack of faith. Bear with the feelings of the weak in faith, if you like. So it's going to manifest as their life not going well, and it may be repeated over and over again, but this is a challenge and an upward call for all of us that we actually, in helping them whose faith is weak, It may mean bearing with them, putting up with the feelings that are there and not passing judgment. Don't make a big deal out of things that are not a big deal. So that's the second thing. The third thing we have then, and I really love this, I read this yesterday, is, and we can put this in different ways, but it's confronting someone's lack of faith. We'll see this with Paul in Acts chapter 26 and in verse 8. It's kind of call attention to what faith looks like, if you like. So in Acts 26, Paul's talking to King Agrippa, and he says, why should any of you consider it incredible that God raises the dead? Why should any of you consider it incredible? You guys are religious. You devote a lot of your time and energy to religious practices, to giving your money, to saying prayers. You worship this God, and Paul says, you don't believe in the resurrection? Why should you consider it incredible that God raises the dead? Do you realize who you're worshiping? He called attention to their lack of faith. Okay, you worship God in this way, but why would this be incredible for God? And I did this very thing this morning. Someone was struggling with their life and how God would help them. And I says, why would that be difficult for God? Why would you consider that not likely to happen? Why would you consider that God wouldn't care? And again, put it in a kind and respectful, loving way. But draw attention, confront someone's lack of faith by revealing what faithfulness looks like. So confront someone's lack of faith. And the fourth one I have here is paint the picture of what God can do along with that. So why would you consider it incredible that God could raise the dead, that God could fill in the blank? Why would you consider that unlikely, or why would you consider that incredible or impossible for God? And again, paint the picture then for the person who's lacking in faith. What would faithfulness look like? What can God do by drawing attention to other scriptures? So we have asking about the faith. We have not bearing with their feelings. We have confronting their lack of faith. Paint the picture of what God can do. And number 5, remind them how God feels about them. So when someone's struggling in their faith, they often feel downhearted and discouraged by their own lack of faith. What I want to do here is look in the scripture to say, how does God treat us when we are faithful? Well, it tells us in 2 Timothy chapter 2, an incredible passage. It says, verse 13, if we are faithless, he will remain faithful. Why? For he cannot disown himself. So it talks about difficulties that Christians have. If we disown him, he'll disown us. If we die with him, we'll live with him. But then it goes on to finish with this last verse. If we are faithless, he will remain faithful. So even when we're faithless, God doesn't disown us the way he would if we disown him. But when we're just faithless and we struggle to have that cutting edge dynamic faith that we did have, or that faith that just helps us to live a different life, when we don't have it, how does God feel about us? Well, he doesn't give up on us. He continues to fight for us, to go after us, to love us, and to nurture us and help us in any way he can. He'll provide a way out. If we are faithless, he will remain faithful because he cannot disown himself. And he will not disown his children. So reminding people of where they stand before God. We can give more details on that, but God remains faithful. So that's number 5. With number 6, I've got my order down wrong here. So number 6, and this is something I like to try and do more and more for the person who's struggling faith. And I did it this morning with someone who was struggling to deal with the things in their life. I was a bit like, well, come and join me, to do faithful things that you struggle to do right now. In other words, do you want to come and reach out with me? Do you want to come and worship with me? Do you want to come and pray with me? And I think, where do we see this? Jesus calling his first disciples. Those who had some level of faith in him, but his plan was, come and follow me. Now, we're not Jesus, you're not coming to follow Jesus, but where you have faith, we can pass that on by getting people involved with the things that we're already doing ourselves. This is a wonderful thing. It's fellowship or evangelism or worship or prayer or Bible study or any number of other things. We can pass that on by just getting people involved. Come and join me. Wonderful thing to do. Number 7, this might sound like a funny one, but remove the illogical side of faithlessness. So sometimes I can be faithless and others can be faithless, or even like we see with the Jews here who didn't believe in the resurrection. And Paul was calling to account the illogical side of their faithlessness. He's like, you're saying there's no resurrection, you can't believe in the resurrection. Why would that be hard for God to do? And that may be the question we present to each other when it comes to, can I really get that job? If I follow God in this issue and trust Him, will He look after my finances? Will He look after me here? What will happen if I pray here, or if I go and invite this person? Can God not look after you? Is anything too hard for God? So it is like a type of rhetorical question where it's like you're actually dealing with the illogical side of someone's faithlessness. And often, because we believe in God, He's all powerful, all seeing, all knowing, to not fully trust in Him is illogical. So sometimes identifying that illogical part of their faithlessness, that benefits me. But again, we want to deliver it softly and with respect. The last one, Deuteronomy is full of this. When the people were being brought over the Red Sea into the promised land, they'd forgotten all the things that God had done, and He knew there's something they must do when they're feeling weak in their faith. Key word, remember. Remember. Remember what God's done before. Remember all the times and victories you've had in the past. Think about them. Think about how He worked that out. I've done this many times myself. I look back on specific moments when God has came through for me. For the person that's struggling in their faith and you're trying to help them, remember what God's done. Tell me about the last time you stepped out in faith. What was the outcome? When was the last time you had a situation like this? How did you get through it? How do you feel God dealt with you in the past? Just recalling and remembering and sharing and passing on the victories you've had, but also the victories that other people have had that they tend to forget. We tend to forget the things that God has done in our lives. So we all have bad experiences with people who are feeling faithless on all kinds of levels, and we worry, how do I help this person? What on earth do I say? What on earth do I do? We need to have faith ourselves, but in terms of helping those who are weak in faith, here are, again, just a reminder of the things that we have today. We want to ask them about their faith, the elephant in the room. We want to bear with their feelings and not pass judgment on disputable matters. We want to confront their lack of faith. We want to paint a picture of what God can do, remind them how God feels about them at that particular time, invite them to come along and join you as you do acts of faith. Try and remove or reveal the illogical side of their faithlessness. And also then, best of all, at the end of all that, take a trip down memory lane. Try and remember what God has done before and how He came through for you. If we have any thoughts on this today, please let me know what they are. Please like this video if it's helped you today. Please share it on for other people. Please subscribe to that Bible Guy to join this growing community, and let's get His word out there.